The first real challenge came 6 months after Luna had made herself at home in Lisa's cabin. It started with a phone call that Lisa had been dreading since the day she'd gotten her wildlife permits. "Ms. Mitchell," the voice on the other end was professional but firm. "This is Officer Johnson from the State Wildlife Department. We've received some complaints about your situation with the Bobcat, and we need to schedule an inspection." Lisa's heart sank. She'd been so careful to follow all the regulations, to document everything properly, to make sure Luna's needs were being met. But she knew that some people in the area disapproved of her arrangement with Luna, viewing it as unnatural or potentially dangerous. "What kind of complaints?" Lisa asked, though she suspected she already knew. "Concerns about public safety mostly," Officer Johnson replied. "Someone reported seeing a large wildcat in your yard, and there are questions about whether you're properly equipped to handle a predator of this size." The inspection was scheduled for the following week, giving Lisa 7 days to prepare for what could potentially be the end of her life with Luna. She spent those days meticulously organizing her documentation, veterinary records, feeding schedules, safety protocols, and hundreds of photos and videos showing Luna's unique temperament and behavior. But the real preparation was emotional. Lisa had to face the possibility that Luna might be taken away, relocated to a zoo or wildlife sanctuary where she would be safe but separated from the human she'd chosen as family. The thought kept Lisa awake at night, and Luna seemed to sense her distress. During those anxious days, Luna became even more attentive than usual. She would curl up beside Lisa on the couch, purring in that deep, rumbling way that had become so familiar and comforting. When Lisa cried, Luna would gently touch her face with her paw, as if trying to wipe away the tears. The morning of the inspection arrived gray and overcast, matching Lisa's mood perfectly. Officer Johnson was a tall, serious man in his 50s who approached the cabin with obvious caution. He was accompanied by a wildlife biologist named Carol, a woman about Lisa's age with kind eyes and a notebook full of questions. "Where is the animal now?" Officer Johnson asked as they entered the cabin. "She's probably in the kitchen," Lisa replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Luna tends to stay close when there are strangers around." They found Luna exactly where Lisa expected her to be, sitting alertly by her food bowl but watching the visitors with calm curiosity rather than fear or aggression. Officer Johnson stopped short when he saw her. "I have to admit," he said quietly, "I've never seen a bobcat behave like this around strangers." Carol, the biologist, was already taking notes. "May we observe her normal routine?" she asked Lisa. "I'd like to see how she interacts with you during typical daily activities." For the next 2 hours, Lisa went through Luna's usual schedule while the officials observed and documented everything. They watched Luna follow Lisa around the cabin, saw how she responded to verbal commands, and witnessed the gentle way she interacted with her human companion. The real test came when Lisa prepared Luna's afternoon meal. Most wild bobcats would guard their food aggressively, but Luna waited patiently while Lisa prepared her dish, then ate calmly while strangers stood just a few feet away. "This is unprecedented," Carol murmured to Officer Johnson, not realizing Lisa could hear her. "I've studied captive bobcats for 15 years, and I've never seen behavior patterns like this." But the inspection took a difficult turn when they moved outside to evaluate Luna's outdoor enclosure. Lisa had built a large, secure area where Luna could experience fresh air and natural elements while remaining safely contained. It had cost her most of her savings, but she'd thought it was exactly what the regulations required. "The fencing height is adequate," Officer Johnson noted, "but I have concerns about the strength of the construction. A motivated bobcat could potentially break through some of these connections." Lisa's heart began to race. "I can reinforce anything that needs improvement," she said quickly. "Just tell me what needs to be changed." The inspection continued for another hour, with the officials examining every aspect of Luna's care and Lisa's setup. They reviewed her feeding records, veterinary documentation, and safety protocols. They tested the locks on doors and gates, measured the dimensions of Luna's spaces, and asked detailed questions about emergency procedures. Throughout it all, Luna remained calm and cooperative, almost as if she understood that her future was being decided. She stayed close to Lisa, occasionally brushing against her legs in what seemed like a gesture of support. The worst moment came when Officer Johnson asked to see Luna interact with unfamiliar objects, a standard test to evaluate how a captive wild animal responds to stress or surprises. He produced a large, noisy toy that was designed to trigger predator instincts. Lisa held her breath as he activated the toy, which immediately began making loud sounds and erratic movements. Most wild bobcats would either attack it aggressively or flee in panic. Luna did neither. She watched it with mild interest for a few seconds, then looked up at Lisa as if to say, "Are you seriously worried about this silly thing?" Carol was scribbling notes frantically. "Remarkable," she kept muttering. "Absolutely remarkable." After what felt like the longest day of Lisa's life, the officials finished their evaluation and asked to speak with her privately. Luna seemed to sense the importance of the moment and positioned herself between Lisa and the officers, not aggressively, but protectively. "Ms. Mitchell," Officer Johnson began, "I have to be honest with you. When we came here today, I was prepared to recommend that this bobcat be relocated to a professional facility." Lisa felt her world beginning to collapse. "And now I'm not sure that would be in anyone's best interest," he admitted. "What you've achieved here with this animal is unlike anything I've encountered in 25 years of wildlife management." Carol nodded enthusiastically. "The bond between you and this bobcat is extraordinary. She's clearly thriving in your care, and more importantly, she's chosen this life. Relocating her at this point could be traumatic for both of you." The relief that washed over Lisa was so powerful that her knees nearly buckled. Luna must have sensed the change in her emotional state, because she immediately moved closer and began purring loudly. But the officials weren't finished. "There will be conditions," Officer Johnson continued. "Regular inspections, detailed record-keeping, and some modifications to your setup. You'll also need to work with us on an educational program. Your situation could be valuable for wildlife research and public education." Over the following weeks, Lisa made the required improvements to Luna's enclosure and began working with the Wildlife Department on educational presentations. Luna, seemingly unbothered by all the human drama surrounding her, continued to be her remarkable self, part wild predator, part devoted companion, and completely unique. The experience had tested both Lisa and Luna in ways they hadn't expected, but it had also proven something important. Their bond was strong enough to survive scrutiny, criticism, and the possibility of separation. They had chosen each other, and no amount of bureaucracy or social disapproval could change that fundamental truth. As Lisa tucked Luna in for the night in her favorite spot at the foot of the bed, she realized that they had passed their biggest test yet. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together as the unconventional family they had become. 2 years had passed since that life-changing October morning when Luna jumped into Lisa's broken-down truck and chose her as family. As Lisa sat on her cabin porch watching the sunrise paint the mountains golden, she marveled at how much their world had grown beyond that desperate moment on the mountain road. Luna was now a stunning, fully grown bobcat who radiated health and confidence. Her coat gleamed in the morning light, thick and lustrous, showing no trace of the starving, injured creature she'd once been. She could easily return to the wild and thrive, but every single day she made the same choice, to stay with the human who had become her whole world. The transformation hadn't just been Luna's. Lisa had evolved, from a quiet wildlife photographer living alone in the mountains to someone whose cabin had become a destination for people seeking to understand the mysterious bonds between humans and wild animals. Their story had spread far beyond the small mountain community where it began. The educational programs they conducted with the state wildlife department had exceeded everyone's expectations. Every week brought new visitors, school groups, researchers, families, and wildlife enthusiasts who traveled from hundreds of miles away just to witness their extraordinary relationship firsthand. Luna seemed to understand her role as an ambassador. When visitors arrived, she would position herself where everyone could see her clearly, displaying behaviors that left people speechless. She would respond to Lisa's voice, demonstrate her intelligence by solving simple puzzles, and show a level of trust and affection that challenged everything people thought they knew about wild predators. Last month, A group of veterinary students from the state university had spent 3 days observing Luna's daily routine. Dr. Peterson had arranged the visit to help future wildlife. Veterinarians understand animal behavior in new ways. In 40 years of practice, Dr. Peterson told the students as they watched Luna gently take treats from Lisa's hand, "I've never seen anything like this bond. She's teaching us that the line between wild and domesticated isn't as clear as we thought. But it was the quiet moments between public appearances that truly revealed the depth of their connection." Every morning, Luna would greet Lisa with the same soft, chirping sounds she'd made that first day in the truck. Only now they carried the warmth of absolute trust and love. Their daily routine had become a dance they both knew by heart. After breakfast, Luna would follow Lisa around the cabin as she worked, sometimes draping herself across Lisa's desk while she edited photos or answered emails about their educational programs. If Lisa spent too long at the computer, Luna would gently place her paw on the keyboard, as if reminding her that there was a whole world outside waiting for them. The afternoons were Luna's favorite time. They would venture into the secure outdoor area Lisa had built, where Luna could experience the sights, sounds, and smells of the forest while remaining safely contained. Lisa had expanded the enclosure twice over the years, creating a space that was part sanctuary, part playground. Luna loved to climb the tall cedar posts and platforms Lisa had installed, showing off her natural agility while never straying far from her human companion. Sometimes she would call to Lisa from her perch high above, making conversational sounds that seemed to say, "Look at me. Look how strong I am." The evening ritual was Lisa's favorite part of each day. As the sun began to set behind the mountains, they would settle together on the porch. Luna curled up beside Lisa's chair with one paw resting lightly on her arm. The contact was gentle but constant, a reassurance that they were still connected, still choosing each other. During these peaceful moments, Lisa often reflected on how much they'd both given up for this life together. She'd turned down photography assignments that would have taken her away from home. She'd ended a promising relationship with someone who couldn't accept Luna as part of the package. She'd spent most of her savings on veterinary care, specialized food, and improving Luna's living space. But Luna had sacrificed things too. She'd given up the vast territories that wild bobcats typically roam. She'd never experienced the thrill of a completely free hunt or the possibility of raising cubs of her own. She'd traded the independence that defined her species for the security and love of a human family. Yet watching Luna's contentment during their evening routine, Lisa was convinced that both of them had made the right choice. Luna's purring had evolved over the years into a complex communication system. There was the deep, rumbling purr of complete contentment, the lighter, faster purr that meant she wanted attention, and the soft, almost musical purr she reserved for moments when she seemed to be expressing pure gratitude. The challenges hadn't disappeared completely. Luna still had moments when her wild instincts surfaced, usually during storms or when the moon was particularly bright. She would pace restlessly, her amber eyes reflecting something ancient and untamed. During these times, Lisa had learned to give her space while staying close enough to provide comfort when the wildness passed. There had been difficult decisions along the way. Several zoos had offered to take Luna, promising her spacious habitats and the company of other bobcats. A wildlife documentary crew had wanted to follow them for a year, offering substantial payment that would have solved Lisa's financial worries. A university research program had proposed studying Luna's unique behaviors in a controlled laboratory setting. Lisa had declined every offer, and each time Luna seemed to sense what was happening. She would become more affectionate during these periods, as if reinforcing her choice to stay exactly where she was. The local community had gradually accepted their unusual family. Betty from the general store still checked on them regularly, bringing supplies and sharing local news. Tommy, the mechanic who'd fixed Lisa's truck that first day, had become a friend who understood that some things in life couldn't be explained, only appreciated. Dr. Peterson continued his monthly visits, though they'd become more social than medical. Luna's health was perfect, but the old veterinarian enjoyed documenting her ongoing development and the evolution of her relationship with Lisa. "You know," he'd said during his last visit, I think Luna has taught us more about animal intelligence and emotion than any laboratory study ever could. She's proof that love isn't limited by species boundaries. The scientific community had indeed taken notice. Lisa's careful documentation of Luna's behaviors had contributed to research papers about animal cognition, cross-species bonding, and the complex emotional lives of wild predators. But the academic interest never overshadowed the simple reality of their daily life together. Luna had developed preferences and quirks that made her as individual as any family member. She preferred her water bowl filled twice daily with fresh, cold water. She had favorite toys that she would carry around the cabin like treasures. She knew the sound of Lisa's truck and would always be waiting by the door when she returned from town. She'd learned to associate certain sounds with specific activities. The beep of Lisa's camera meant it was time to pose for photos that would help with their educational work. The rustle of her treat bag meant rewards were coming. The sound of visitors' cars arriving meant it was time to be on her best behavior as an ambassador for wildlife understanding. As another day drew to a close and the first stars appeared in the mountain sky, Lisa reached out to gently stroke Luna's ears. The familiar purring began immediately. That sound that had become the soundtrack to Lisa's happiness. "We did good, didn't we, girl?" Lisa whispered. Luna responded with a soft chirp and pressed closer, her way of saying what they both knew to be true. They had found something rare and precious in each other, a bond that transcended logic, defied convention, and proved that family could be created in the most unexpected ways. Tomorrow would bring new visitors, new opportunities to share their story, and new moments of discovery in their continuing journey together. But tonight, in the quiet of their mountain home, they were simply what they'd always been since that October morning, two souls who had chosen each other and created something beautiful from an impossible beginning. 3 weeks had passed since that life-changing day on the mountain road, and Lisa's small cabin had been transformed into something she never could have imagined. What started as a temporary arrangement while the Bobcat recovered had slowly evolved into the most unusual living situation she'd ever experienced. The cat, whom Lisa had named Luna after watching her prowl restlessly during the first full moon at the cabin, had made a complete physical recovery. Dr. Peterson's careful treatment plan had worked perfectly. The infections were gone, her weight was back to normal, and her coat had regained its natural luster. But Luna showed absolutely no interest in returning to the wild. Every morning, Lisa woke to find Luna curled up at the foot of her bed, amber eyes already open and watching her with an intelligence that never failed to amaze her. The cat had claimed the sunny spot by the kitchen window as her favorite daytime perch, where she could observe the forest outside while staying close to her chosen human. Lisa had tried everything to encourage Luna's natural instincts. She'd left doors and windows open, hoping the cat would venture back into the woods. She'd even driven Luna back to the spot where they'd first met, thinking familiar territory might trigger some wild memory. But Luna had simply sat in the truck and stared at Lisa with what could only be described as confusion, as if to say, "Why are we here when home is back at the cabin?" The wildlife permits had been surprisingly easy to obtain. Dr. Peterson knew people in the state wildlife department, and Luna's unique circumstances had generated interest from researchers studying animal behavior. As long as Lisa met certain requirements for housing and care, she was legally allowed to keep Luna as an educational ambassador for wildlife conservation. But legal permission was one thing. The daily reality of living with a bobcat was something else entirely. Luna had her own routine, and she expected Lisa to respect it. Every morning at exactly 6:30, she would sit by her food bowl and make soft chirping sounds until Lisa got up to feed her. The specialized diet Dr. Peterson had recommended wasn't cheap. High-quality proteins supplemented with vitamins and minerals that wild bobcats would normally get from their prey. After breakfast, Luna would follow Lisa around the cabin like an oversized house cat. If Lisa was working at her computer, editing photos or answering emails, Luna would curl up on the desk nearby, occasionally placing a paw on the keyboard when she felt she wasn't getting enough attention. If Lisa was cooking, Luna would sit in the kitchen doorway, watching every movement with the intensity of a cooking show judge. The most remarkable thing was how Luna seemed to understand the rhythm of human life. She knew the difference between weekdays and weekends, becoming more playful and attention-seeking when Lisa didn't have to work. She recognized the sound of Lisa's truck returning from town and would be waiting by the door when Lisa came inside, greeting her with soft trills and head bumps that felt more like hugs than typical cat behavior. But it wasn't always easy. Luna was still a wild predator, even if she'd chosen to live like a house pet. Her play could be rough, and her hunting instincts were never completely dormant. Lisa had learned to wear thick gloves when they played, and she'd had to cat-proof the cabin in ways that went far beyond what any house cat owner would ever consider. Luna's strength was incredible. She could leap from floor to ceiling in a single bound, and she'd accidentally broken more than one piece of furniture during particularly energetic play sessions. Lisa had installed sturdy shelving throughout the cabin to give Luna vertical space to explore, turning her home into something that looked like a cross between a cozy mountain retreat and a zoo exhibit. The social aspect was perhaps the most challenging. Luna was intensely protective of Lisa and didn't take kindly to strangers. When Dr. Peterson came for his monthly checkups, Luna would watch him carefully but allow his presence. But unexpected visitors were met with low growls and positioning that made it clear Luna considered herself Lisa's guardian. Lisa's dating life had become virtually non-existent. The one time she'd invited someone over for dinner, Luna had spent the entire evening pacing between Lisa and her guest, making it clear that she disapproved of sharing her human's attention. The poor man had left early, probably wondering what he'd gotten himself into, but for every challenge, there were moments of pure magic that made it all worthwhile. Luna had developed her own ways of showing affection that were unlike anything Lisa had ever experienced with a domestic animal. She would bring Lisa gifts, usually sticks or interesting rocks she'd found during her supervised outdoor time. She'd learned to open doors by watching Lisa, and she had an uncanny ability to sense Lisa's moods. When Lisa was sad or stressed, Luna would seek her out and curl up beside her, purring in a way that seemed specifically designed to be comforting. When Lisa was happy, Luna would become playful and energetic, as if feeding off her human's positive emotions. It was like living with a furry therapist who happened to be a wild predator. The communication between them had evolved into something remarkable. Luna had developed an entire vocabulary of sounds that Lisa was gradually learning to interpret. There was a specific chirp that meant, "I want to go outside," a different trill that meant, "I'm hungry," and a soft rumbling sound that seemed to mean, "Everything is good in my world, Lisa," had started documenting their daily life together, both out of fascination and because she realized how unprecedented their relationship was. The photos and videos she captured showed Luna behaving in ways that challenged everything experts thought. They knew about bobcat behavior. There was the morning. Luna had learned to turn on the faucet in the bathroom sink, preferring fresh running water to the bowl Lisa provided. There was the afternoon Lisa found Luna curled up with one of her books, as if she'd been trying to read. And there was the evening Luna had somehow figured out how to work the television remote, cycling through channels until she found a nature documentary about wild cats. Dr. Peterson visited monthly, and each time he left shaking his head in amazement. "I've been studying animal behavior for 40 years, he told Lisa during his last visit, "and I've never seen anything like the bond you two have developed. She's not just living with you, she's chosen to be part of your family." As Lisa sat in her cabin that evening, watching Luna groom herself in the window while keeping one eye on the forest outside, she realized that Dr. Peterson was right. This wasn't just about rescuing a wild animal anymore. Somewhere along the way, they'd become family in the truest sense of the word. Luna must have sensed Lisa watching her, because she turned and fixed those amber eyes on her human's face. For a moment, they simply looked at each other across the small space that had become their shared world. Then Luna made that soft rumbling sound that meant contentment, stretched luxuriously, and settled down for the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and new moments of wonder in their unconventional life together. But tonight, sitting in her transformed cabin with her unlikely companion, Lisa couldn't imagine wanting to be anywhere else in the world. Lisa stood frozen beside her truck, staring at the most impossible sight she'd ever witnessed. The Bobcat had made itself completely comfortable in her passenger seat, curled up like it had been riding shotgun for years. Its breathing was shallow but steady, and every few seconds, a soft purring sound escaped from its throat, something she'd never heard a wild bobcat do before. Her mind raced through everything she knew about wildlife behavior. Bobcats were solitary hunters, fiercely independent, and absolutely terrified of humans. They didn't seek help. They didn't trust strangers. And they certainly didn't climb into vehicles like lost pets looking for a ride home. But here was living proof that everything she thought she knew might be wrong. The cat's condition was even worse up close. Lisa could count every rib through its dull, matted fur. Fresh scratches crisscrossed its back legs, and she noticed a small cut on its left paw that looked infected. This wasn't just a hungry animal. This was a creature that had been fighting for survival and losing badly. Okay, Lisa whispered to herself, trying to process the situation. Now what? The nearest town was 3 hours away, assuming she could get her truck running again. The nearest veterinarian was probably even farther, and she had a wild predator sleeping in her passenger seat like it was the most natural thing in the world. Lisa carefully approached the driver's side door, moving slowly so she wouldn't startle her unexpected passenger. The Bobcat opened one amber eye as she slid into the driver's seat, but showed no signs of fear or aggression. Instead, it made a soft chirping sound that seemed almost conversational. "I don't know what you're trying to tell me," Lisa said quietly, "but I'm going to try to help you, okay?" The cat's ear twitched at the sound of her voice, and those intelligent eyes studied her face with an intensity that was both fascinating and slightly unnerving. There was something almost human in that gaze, as if the animal was trying to communicate something important. Lisa turned the ignition key, hoping against hope that the truck might start, despite the blown radiator hose. The engine turned over once, twice, then caught with a rough idle. Steam still poured from under the hood, but the temperature gauge hadn't moved into the danger zone yet. Maybe, just maybe, she could nurse it far enough to find help. As she put the truck in gear, the Bobcat shifted positions, but didn't seem alarmed by the movement. In fact, it stretched out one paw and gently placed it on Lisa's arm, as if offering reassurance. The touch was so unexpected, so deliberately gentle, that Lisa almost started crying right there on the spot. "You're trying to comfort me, aren't you?" she asked, barely believing the words coming out of her mouth. "Here you are, half-starved and hurt, and you're worried about me." The cat made another soft, chirping sound and settled back into the seat, but kept one paw resting lightly on Lisa's arm. The gesture was so human-like, so full of trust and gratitude, that it took Lisa's breath away. The truck limped down the mountain road at barely 30 miles per hour, steam trailing behind them like a wounded dragon. Lisa kept one eye on the temperature gauge and one eye on her passenger, who seemed remarkably calm for a wild animal experiencing its first car ride. Every few minutes, the Bobcat would lift its head and look out the window, watching the passing forest with what appeared to be curiosity rather than the panic Lisa would have expected. When they passed a small creek, the cat's ears perked up and it made a soft, trilling sound. "You're thirsty, aren't you?" Lisa realized. She'd been so focused on getting help that she hadn't thought about the cat's immediate needs. There was a water bottle in her camera bag. But how do you offer water to a wild bobcat in a moving vehicle? At the next wide spot in the road, Lisa pulled over and turned off the engine. The silence of the mountains surrounded them again, broken only by the gentle hissing of steam from under the hood. She reached slowly for her water bottle, watching the cat's reaction carefully. The Bobcat sat up straighter, those amber eyes tracking every movement. But instead of showing fear or aggression, it leaned forward slightly, as if anticipating what Lisa was about to do. Lisa poured water into the bottle cap and held it out tentatively. Without hesitation, the cat stretched its neck forward and began to drink, lapping delicately at the small pool of water. When the cap was empty, it looked up at Lisa expectantly. "More?" Lisa asked, refilling the cap. The cat drank again, more eagerly this time, and Lisa realized just how dehydrated the poor creature must be. She refilled the cap 3 more times before the cat finally seemed satisfied. As they prepared to continue their journey, the bobcat did something that nearly broke Lisa's heart. It reached out with one paw and gently touched her hand, holding the contact for several seconds before settling back into its spot. The gesture was so clearly a thank you that Lisa felt tears welling up in her eyes. "You're welcome," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "We're going to get you help, I promise." The truck started again, though the temperature gauge climbed higher than before. Lisa knew they were running out of time before the engine would overheat completely. She pressed on, driving by instinct more than sight as tears blurred her vision. The cat seemed to sense her distress. It began making soft, rhythmic purring sounds that filled the cab of the truck with an oddly comforting vibration. Lisa had never heard a bobcat purr before. She wasn't even sure they could. But the sound was unmistakably meant to be soothing. "You're trying to help me stay calm, aren't you?" Lisa marveled. "How is this possible?" As if in response, the cat placed its paw on her arm again, maintaining the gentle contact as they drove. The gesture was so tender, so full of understanding that Lisa felt her anxiety begin to ease despite their desperate situation. They rounded a bend in the road and Lisa's heart leaped. In the distance, she could see the lights of a small town twinkling in the valley below. It wasn't much, maybe a gas station, a diner, and a few houses, but where there were people, there might be help. The bobcat seemed to sense the change in Lisa's mood. It sat up straighter, looking out the windshield at the approaching lights with what appeared to be hope in its eyes. "Almost there," Lisa said softly. "Just hold on a little longer." The cat made one more soft, chirping sound and settled back against the seat, but kept its paw resting on Lisa's arm. In that moment, Lisa realized that whatever happened next, her life had been changed forever by this extraordinary creature that had chosen to trust her with its survival. The temperature gauge was now firmly in the red zone, and steam was pouring more heavily from under the hood. But they were going to make it. Against all odds, they were going to reach help, and they were going to do it together. The old pickup truck wheezed to a stop on the lonely mountain road. Steam rose from under the hood like morning mist, and the temperature gauge pointed dangerously into the red zone. Lisa turned off the engine and sat back in her seat, letting out a long breath that fogged up the windshield in the cold October air. "Great, just great," she muttered to herself, pulling her jacket tighter. She was 3 hours away from the nearest town, with no cell phone signal and a truck that had finally given up after years of faithful service. The photographer grabbed her camera bag from the passenger seat and stepped out into the crisp mountain air. The silence hit her first. No cars, no people, just the whisper of wind through the pine trees and the distant call of a hawk circling overhead. She'd been driving these back roads for 15 years, chasing the perfect shot of wildlife in their natural habitat. Today was supposed to be simple, a quick trip to photograph the changing fall colors before the first snow arrived. Lisa popped the hood and immediately stepped back as hot steam billowed out. Even without being a mechanic, she could tell this wasn't something she could fix with the basic tools in her toolbox. The radiator hose had split wide open, leaving a puddle of green coolant on the gravel beneath the truck. She pulled out her phone anyway, hoping for even one bar of signal. Nothing. The mountains here were beautiful but unforgiving when it came to modern conveniences. Her GPS had lost signal 20 minutes ago, and now her lifeline to the outside world was completely cut off. Walking back to survey her options, Lisa noticed how the temperature was dropping fast. The sun would set in a few hours, and mountain nights in October could be brutal. She had emergency supplies in the truck, a sleeping bag, some energy bars, and bottled water. But spending the night alone on this isolated road wasn't exactly appealing. As she bent down to examine the damaged hose more closely, a branch snapped somewhere in the forest behind her. Lisa froze. Living and working in mountain country had taught her to respect the wildlife that called these places home. Bears were common in this area, especially this time of year when they were preparing for winter. She straightened up slowly and turned around, scanning the tree line for any movement. Nothing seemed out of place at first. The tall pines swayed gently in the breeze, their needles whispering secrets she couldn't understand. A squirrel chattered angrily at something deeper in the woods. But that was normal enough. Then she saw it. About 50 feet away, partially hidden behind a fallen log, something was watching her. At first glance, it looked like a house cat, but as her eyes adjusted, Lisa realized this was no domestic animal. The creature was bigger, with distinctive ear tufts and that unmistakable spotted coat pattern she'd photographed dozens of times through her telephoto lens. A bobcat. But something was wrong with this picture. Bobcats were notoriously shy creatures, masters of staying hidden from human eyes. They didn't just sit in the open staring at people. And this one looked rough, really rough. Even from a distance, Lisa could see that its fur was matted and dull, hanging loose on what appeared to be a painfully thin frame. The cat took a tentative step forward, then another. Lisa's heart started beating faster. In all her years of wildlife photography, she'd learned to read animal behavior, and everything about this situation felt off. Healthy wild animals kept their distance from humans. They certainly didn't approach broken-down vehicles on remote mountain roads. "Easy there," Lisa whispered, though she doubted the cat could hear her. She slowly reached for her camera, thinking this might be the most unusual wildlife encounter she'd ever documented. But as she lifted the camera to her eye, the bobcat did something that stopped her cold. It meowed, not the wild yowl or aggressive hiss she'd expect from a bobcat, but a soft, almost pleading meow that sounded more like a house cat asking for dinner. The sound sent chills down Lisa's spine for reasons she couldn't explain. The cat continued moving closer, its gait unsteady. Now Lisa could see just how bad its condition really was. The animal was clearly starving. Its ribs showed through its matted coat, and there were what looked like scratches or bite marks on its legs. One ear appeared to be torn, probably from a fight with another predator. "Oh, you poor thing," Lisa breathed, lowering her camera. Every instinct told her to back away, to give the wild animal space, to remember all the safety rules she'd learned over the years. But looking into those amber eyes, she saw something that broke those rules into tiny pieces. The bobcat wasn't looking at her like a predator sizing up potential prey, or even like a wild animal defending its territory. It was looking at her the way a lost child might look at a police officer, with desperate hope that somehow, some way help had finally arrived. Against every logical thought in her head, Lisa took a step toward the cat. Then another. The bobcat didn't run. Instead, it sat down heavily, as if the effort of walking had exhausted what little energy it had left. Up close, Lisa could see that the animal was young, probably female, and in worse shape than she'd initially thought. "What happened to you?" she asked softly, crouching down about 10 feet away. The bobcat tilted its head at the sound of her voice, those intelligent eyes never leaving her face. There was something almost human in that gaze, a communication that went beyond species barriers. That's when the most extraordinary thing happened. The bobcat stood up, walked directly to Lisa's truck, and with a grace that belied its weakened condition, jumped right into the open driver's side door. It settled into the passenger seat like it belonged there, curled up in a tight ball, and closed its eyes. Lisa stared in complete shock. In 38 years of life, 20 of them spent working with wildlife, she had never seen anything like this. Wild bobcats didn't just climb into vehicles. They didn't seek out human contact. They certainly didn't make themselves at home in pickup trucks like oversized house cats. But here was this desperate, starving creature that had apparently decided Lisa was its best hope for survival. And looking at those closed eyes, at the way the cat's breathing was becoming more relaxed for the first time since she'd spotted it, Lisa realized something that would change both their lives forever. This wasn't just a random wildlife encounter. This was a choice. The bobcat had chosen her, had picked her out of all the empty wilderness, had decided that this broken-down truck and this one human represented safety in a world that had clearly been anything but safe. Standing there in the mountain silence, with a wild predator sleeping peacefully in her passenger seat, Lisa faced a decision that would test everything she thought she knew about wildlife, about herself, and about the invisible bonds that sometimes form between the most unlikely companions. The radiator hose was still broken. Her phone still had no signal. Night was still coming fast. But suddenly, getting home seemed less important than figuring out what to do about the beautiful, broken creature that had literally jumped into her life and refused to leave. The truck rolled into the small mountain town just as the engine gave its final gasp. Steam billowed from under the hood like a white flag of surrender, and the temperature gauge buried itself so far into the red zone that Lisa wondered if it might break. She coasted into the parking lot of what appeared to be the town's only business still, open, a combination gas station and general store with a hand-painted sign that simply read, Mountain View. The Bobcat had remained calm throughout their desperate journey, but now it lifted its head and looked around with obvious curiosity. The small town couldn't have more than a few hundred residents, and Lisa could only hope that someone here might know where to find veterinary help. She turned off the engine and sat for a moment, trying to figure out her next move. The cat was still weak, still clearly in need of immediate medical attention, and she was stranded 3 hours from anywhere with a vehicle that would never run again. Okay. Girl, Lisa said softly, assuming the cat was female based on her smaller size. I need to go inside and ask for help. Will you wait here for me? The bobcat looked directly at her when she spoke, those amber eyes alert and focused. It was almost like the animal understood every word. When Lisa reached for the door handle, the cat made a soft whining sound that seemed to say, Don't leave me. I'll be right back, Lisa promised. 5 minutes, that's all. She slipped out of the truck carefully, leaving the door cracked open in case the cat needed air. Through the window, she could see the bobcat settling back into the passenger seat, but its eyes never left her as she walked toward the store. The bell above the door chimed as Lisa entered, and she found herself face to face with a woman in her 60s who was restocking shelves behind the counter. The woman looked up with the kind of friendly curiosity that was common in small mountain towns. You okay, honey? The woman asked, obviously noticing Lisa's frazzled appearance. Saw your truck steaming pretty good out there. I need help, Lisa said, the words tumbling out faster than she intended. I found an injured bobcat on the road and she's in really bad shape. Do you know if there's a veterinarian anywhere around here? The woman's eyebrows shot up. A bobcat? Wild bobcat? Yes, but she's different, Lisa tried to explain. She's not aggressive at all. She actually climbed into my truck and won't leave. I think she's starving and she has some infected wounds. I know it sounds crazy, but... Dr. Peterson, the woman interrupted, already reaching for a phone behind the counter. He's our local vet, runs a clinic about 20 minutes from here. Treats everything from horses to house cats, and he's got experience with wildlife too. Had to patch up a few bears and deer over the years. Relief flooded through Lisa so powerfully that her knees nearly buckled. Would he see a bobcat? I mean, legally, is that okay? The older woman was already dialing. Honey, when an animal needs help, Dr. Peterson doesn't ask too many questions first. We'll worry about the paperwork later. She paused as someone answered the phone. Doc, it's Betty from the store. I've got a situation here. While Betty explained the situation to the veterinarian, Lisa glanced out the window to check on her passenger. The bobcat was exactly where she'd left her, sitting upright in the passenger seat like she was waiting patiently for Lisa to return. Even through the glass, Lisa could see those intelligent eyes tracking her movements. He'll see you, Betty said, hanging up the phone. Says to bring her right over. I'll call my nephew Tommy to come look at your truck, but you're going to need a ride to the clinic. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering, Betty said firmly. That poor creature chose you for a reason, and we're going to see this through. 20 minutes later, Lisa found herself sitting in the waiting room of the most unusual veterinary clinic she'd ever seen. Dr. Peterson worked out of a converted barn on his property, complete with examining rooms that could accommodate everything from tiny kittens to full-grown cattle. The walls were covered with photos of the animals he'd treated over the years, including several that were clearly wild. The bobcat had traveled in Lisa's arms for the short car ride, showing no signs of stress or fear. If anything, she seemed to understand that help was finally coming. Now she lay quietly on the examining table, allowing Dr. Peterson to check her over with a thoroughness that amazed everyone in the room, Well, I'll be damned, the veterinarian muttered as he listened to the cat's heartbeat. 40 years I've been doing this, and I've never seen anything like it. Dr. Peterson was a man in his 70s with gentle hands and kind eyes that had seen countless animals in distress. But even he seemed amazed by the bobcat's behavior. "What's her condition?" Lisa asked, trying to prepare herself for bad news. "Severely malnourished, definitely," the doctor said, running his hands carefully along the cat's ribs. "She's probably lost about 30% of her body weight. These wounds on her legs are infected, but not severely. Looks like she tangled with something bigger than herself and came out on the losing end." The bobcat lay perfectly still during the examination, occasionally making soft chirping sounds when Dr. Peterson found a particularly tender spot. But she showed no aggression, no fear, just an almost human-like patience with the process. "The remarkable thing," Dr. Peterson continued, "is her temperament. I've treated a few bobcats over the years, usually after car accidents or similar trauma. Every single one of them fought like hell, even when they were barely conscious. This little lady is acting more like a house cat than a wild predator." "Why would she behave like this?" Lisa asked. Dr. Peterson shook his head slowly. "Best guess? She was probably orphaned very young, before she learned proper hunting skills or fear of humans. But even that doesn't fully explain this level of trust. She's made a choice here, decided that you represent safety in a world that's been anything but safe for her." The cat turned her head at the sound of Lisa's voice, fixing those amber eyes on her face with an intensity that took Lisa's breath away. There was something almost grateful in that gaze, a recognition that somehow transcended species barriers. "Can you help her?" Lisa asked quietly. "Absolutely," Dr. Peterson said with confidence. "She needs antibiotics for the infections, IV fluids for dehydration, and a carefully managed feeding program to get her weight back up safely. But the real question is what happens after that." Lisa felt her heart sink. She'd been so focused on getting help for the bobcat that she hadn't thought about the bigger picture. "What do you mean?" "Wild animals that imprint on humans like this rarely survive if they're released back into the wild," the doctor explained gently. "She's lost her natural fear of people, which makes her vulnerable. And if she never learned proper hunting skills, she might not be able to feed herself adequately." The room fell silent except for the soft sound of the bobcat's breathing. Lisa looked down at the beautiful creature that had trusted her enough to literally jump into her life and felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders like a heavy blanket. "So what are my options?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Dr. Peterson smiled sadly. "That depends on how much you care about this little lady and how much your life is about to change.